Let me tell you something most adults learn too late. Toxic people don't ruin your life, your reaction to them does. As a child, you argue. As a teenager, you prove. But as an adult, you decide. And the right way to deal with toxic people is not louder words, it's stronger boundaries. Because here's the truth: toxic people survive on emotion, confusion, drama, reaction. They throw chaos into the room and wait for you to catch it. And most people do. They defend themselves. They over-explain. They fight to be understood. They try to win the argument. But adults who grow, they don't fight for control of the room. They control themselves. That's the shift. The first thing you must learn is this: stop trying to fix people who enjoy being broken. Not everyone who hurts you is confused. Some people know exactly what they're doing. And maturity is recognizing the pattern instead of excusing the behavior. You don't need another explanation. You need awareness. Now listen carefully. The right way to deal with toxic people is emotional regulation. Before you speak, pause. Because whoever controls the pace controls the power. If someone disrespects you and you instantly react, they just pulled you into their storm. But if you pause, look at them, and respond calmly, you just shifted the entire dynamic. Calm is uncomfortable for toxic people. They expect fireworks. Give them silence. They expect anger. Give them clarity. They expect long arguments. Give them short sentences. I'm not comfortable with that. We're not doing this. That doesn't work for me. No speeches. No defending. No emotional performance. Boundaries are not emotional. They're decisions. And here's something powerful. A boundary without consequence is just a suggestion. If someone repeatedly crosses the line and you keep explaining the line, you're teaching them it's flexible. Adults don't threaten. They enforce. That might mean limiting access. That might mean shorter conversations. That might mean distance. And sometimes it means walking away without announcement. Not every exit requires a speech. Now let's talk about something deeper. You must detach from the need to be understood. This is where most strong people get stuck. They think, if I just explain better, they'll get it. No. Toxic people don't misunderstand you. They resist accountability. And when you accept that, you stop wasting energy trying to translate your pain into their language. You don't need everyone to agree with your boundary. You just need to honor it. And here's the hardest part. Sometimes toxic people are family. Sometimes they're coworkers. Sometimes they're people you can't completely remove. So what do adults do? They adjust access. You can love someone and still limit how much they affect you. You can be respectful and still be distant. You can be kind without being available. That's emotional maturity. And let me give you one more truth. Revenge feels powerful in the moment. Growth feels powerful for a lifetime. You don't rise by pulling someone down. You rise by refusing to stand in the same mud. So the right way to deal with toxic people: you don't argue to win. You speak to be clear. You don't react to provoke. You respond to protect. You don't stay to prove loyalty. You leave to preserve peace. Because adulthood isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. And when you do that, toxic people lose their influence. Not because they changed, but because you did. And that is power. One of the most powerful shifts you can make as an adult is this: recognize the pattern, not the personality. Most people stay trapped in toxic dynamics because they focus on who the person is instead of what the person repeatedly does. They tell themselves, that's just how he is, or she's always been like that, as if personality is a permanent excuse for destructive behavior. But maturity begins when you stop analyzing character and start observing patterns. Personality can be charming. Patterns are revealing. Personality can apologize. Patterns repeat. When someone hurts you, it is easy to personalize it. You start asking, what did I do wrong? You replay conversations in your head. You adjust your tone. You shrink your opinions. You try to become easier to deal with. But toxic behavior is rarely about you. It is about control, insecurity, projection, or emotional immaturity. And when you personalize it, you take responsibility for something you did not create. That is how you slowly lose your confidence without even realizing it. Patterns, however, tell the truth. Patterns don't care about excuses. If someone only respects you when they need something, that is a pattern. If they dismiss your feelings every time you express them, that is a pattern. If they apologize but repeat the same behavior next week, that is a pattern. Adults who grow stop listening to promises and start watching consistency. Because consistency is character. not intensity, not emotional speeches, consistency. Toxic people often rely on confusion. One day they are warm. The next day they are cold. One moment they praise you. The next they criticize you. This emotional unpredictability keeps you focused on their personality. You start thinking, but they can be so nice, and you cling to those moments as proof that things can change. But recognizing the pattern means zooming out. It means asking yourself, what happens most of the time? Not on birthdays, not during good moods, most of the time. That answer will give you clarity faster than any excuse ever could. When you stop personalizing behavior, you stop absorbing it. If someone constantly interrupts you, it is not because your voice lacks value. It is because they lack discipline in listening. If someone constantly belittles you, it is not because you are small. It is because they feel smaller. Their behavior is information about them, not a measurement of you. But you can only see that when you detach your identity from their actions. There is also a quiet strength in observing without reacting. Instead of arguing every time something happens, you begin to take mental notes. You notice how they respond to boundaries. You notice how they handle accountability. You notice whether they take responsibility or immediately shift blame. These repeated responses form a pattern, and patterns are predictable. Once you see them clearly, you are no longer shocked. You are prepared. Preparation changes everything. When you recognize that someone always escalates conflict instead of resolving it, you stop expecting healthy communication. When you recognize that someone always plays the victim when confronted, you stop trying to win debates with logic. You adjust your expectations. You protect your energy. You respond strategically instead of emotionally. And that is what adulthood looks like. It is not about labeling someone as toxic in anger. It is about calmly identifying repeated behavior and deciding what you will tolerate. Personalizing behavior keeps you stuck in hope. Recognizing patterns moves you toward decisions. Hope says, maybe this time will be. Awareness says, it has never been different. That distinction is powerful, because when you see repetition clearly, you no longer need dramatic proof. You do not need one final explosion to justify distance. The repetition itself is enough evidence. This does not mean you become cold or judgmental. It means you become observant. You can still have compassion for someone's struggles while refusing to ignore their impact on you. Understanding someone's past does not require you to accept their present behavior. Adults learn that empathy and boundaries can exist in the same sentence. I understand you've been through a lot, but I will not accept being treated this way. That is emotional maturity. Another important shift is realizing that patterns reveal priorities. If someone repeatedly cancels on you but never misses work, that is a pattern of priority. If someone repeatedly disrespects your time but demands respect for theirs, that is a pattern of entitlement. When you personalize it, you feel rejected. When you recognize it as a pattern, you see misalignment. And misalignment requires adjustment, not self-blame. The reason this mindset is so powerful is because it restores your internal stability. Instead of riding the emotional roller coaster of someone else's moods, you anchor yourself in observation. You stop chasing clarity from them and start trusting what you consistently experience. Your nervous system relaxes because you are no longer confused. Confusion fades when patterns become visible. And here is the quiet truth. Once you see the pattern clearly, you cannot unsee it. You may try to ignore it. You may try to justify it. But awareness changes your posture. You speak differently. You respond differently. You decide differently. You stop negotiating your standards with someone who has shown you, repeatedly, what they are willing to offer. Recognizing the pattern, not the personality, is not about labeling people as good or bad. It is about protecting your emotional well-being through clarity. It is about refusing to carry responsibility for behavior that does not belong to you. It is about understanding that repeated actions are louder than emotional moments. And when you operate from that awareness, you stop shrinking to fit someone else's dysfunction. You start standing firm in your own stability. Emotional regulation before communication is one of the clearest markers of adulthood. Calm first. Speak second. That order changes everything. Most conflict does not explode because of the issue itself. It escalates because of unmanaged emotion. When you speak from anger, fear, or ego, you are not communicating, you are reacting. And reaction is fast, loud, and usually regrettable. Regulation is slow, intentional, and powerful. When something triggers you, your body reacts before your mind does. Your heart rate shifts, your breathing changes, your muscles tighten. In that moment, if you open your mouth immediately, you are allowing chemistry to control language. Words spoken in that state are rarely precise. They are defensive, exaggerated, or sharp. They are designed to protect you, not to resolve anything. And once spoken, they cannot be taken back. Calm does not mean you are unaffected. It means you are disciplined. There is a difference. Suppressing emotion is pretending you do not feel it. Regulating emotion is acknowledging it without letting it lead. You can feel anger and still choose composure. You can feel hurt and still choose clarity. That space between feeling and speaking is where maturity lies. The reason calm comes first is simple: whoever controls their emotions controls the direction of the conversation. If someone raises their voice and you match their volume, the discussion becomes a competition. If someone throws accusations and you immediately defend, the focus shifts from solution to survival. But when you pause, breathe, and steady yourself, you interrupt the escalation. You slow the tempo. You make it difficult for chaos to grow. Pausing is not weakness. It is strategy. A short silence before responding can change the entire dynamic. It signals that you are thinking, not reacting. It gives your nervous system time to settle. It allows your rational mind to catch up with your emotional response. In that pause, you can ask yourself simple but powerful questions. What is the real issue here? What outcome do I want? Will my next sentence improve this situation or inflame it? Many people fear that if they do not respond immediately, they will appear passive. In reality, immediate reaction often exposes insecurity. Calm responses communicate stability. When you speak steadily while someone else is agitated, the contrast is obvious. Your composure becomes influence. Your tone becomes authority. You do not need to overpower anyone. You simply refuse to be pulled into emotional turbulence. Emotional regulation also protects your credibility. Once you lose control of your tone, people stop listening to your message. They focus on your delivery instead of your point. Even if you are right, uncontrolled emotion weakens your position. Calm speech, on the other hand, strengthens it. A steady voice forces attention. Clear, measured sentences are harder to dismiss. You become persuasive not because you are louder, but because you are grounded. Regulation requires self-awareness. You must recognize your triggers. Maybe it is disrespect. Maybe it is being interrupted. Maybe it is feeling misunderstood. When you know what activates you, you can prepare for it. Preparation reduces surprise. And reduced surprise lowers emotional intensity. Instead of being blindsided, you anticipate and steady yourself. Breathing is one of the simplest tools for regulation. Slow, deliberate breaths signal safety to your body. When your breathing slows, your heart rate follows. When your heart rate stabilizes, your thinking sharpens. This is not motivational advice. It is biology. A calm body supports a clear mind. A clear mind produces better words. Another key part of calm first communication is separating the event from your interpretation. Someone may say something sharp. Your interpretation might be, they don't respect me. That interpretation fuels anger. But if you pause and consider alternative explanations, the emotional intensity drops. Maybe they are stressed. Maybe they misunderstood. You are not excusing behavior. You are refusing to let assumption amplify emotion. Calm also allows you to choose brevity. Emotional reactions are often long and messy. Regulated responses are short and precise. Instead of a 5-minute defensive speech, you say, I'm not comfortable with that. Instead of attacking back, you say, let's keep this respectful. Short sentences delivered calmly carry more weight than emotional paragraphs. There will be moments when silence is the most powerful response. Not every comment deserves a reply. Not every accusation requires correction. Emotional regulation helps you discern when to engage and when to disengage. You conserve energy. You protect your peace. You avoid unnecessary battles. It is important to understand that calm does not guarantee the other person will respond calmly. You cannot control their behavior, but you can prevent their behavior from dictating yours. When you regulate yourself, you remove their ability to manipulate your emotions easily. That is strength, not suppression, strength. Over time, practicing calm first communication builds internal confidence. You trust yourself more because you know you will not sabotage important conversations with impulsive reactions. You become someone who can handle tension without exploding or collapsing. People begin to feel safer communicating with you because your reactions are predictable and measured. Emotional regulation before communication is not about being robotic. It is about being intentional. Feel fully. Pause deliberately. Speak carefully. When you master that sequence, your words gain weight. Your presence gains respect. And your relationships shift because you are no longer speaking from the storm. Set clear, calm boundaries. Not loud. Not angry. Just firm. That is where real authority lies. Most people misunderstand boundaries. They think boundaries require volume. They think strength must sound aggressive. They believe if they are not forceful, they will not be taken seriously. But adulthood teaches something different. The strongest boundaries are not emotional performances. They are steady decisions delivered without apology. A boundary is not about controlling someone else's behavior. It is about defining what you will and will not accept. That distinction changes the tone immediately. When you try to control, you argue. When you define, you state. Arguing invites debate. Stating creates clarity. Toxic dynamics often continue because boundaries are either never set or set emotionally and inconsistently. Clear and calm boundaries remove confusion. They remove negotiation. Clarity is power. If you are vague, people will test you. If you are inconsistent, people will push further. But when you communicate directly and calmly, your words carry weight. I will leave if this continues. I am not available for this conversation. These statements are not dramatic. They are not long explanations. They are simple and specific. And specificity reduces manipulation. Anger feels powerful in the moment, but it weakens boundaries. When you shout a limit, the other person focuses on your emotion instead of your message. They respond to your tone rather than your standard. Calm firmness eliminates that distraction. When your voice stays steady, there is nothing to attack except the boundary itself. And if the boundary is reasonable, attacking it exposes the other person's unwillingness to respect it. Many adults struggle with guilt when setting boundaries. They worry about being perceived as rude, difficult, or selfish. But boundaries are not punishment, they are protection. You are not rejecting a person, you are rejecting behavior. That mindset helps you stay calm. You do not need to justify protecting your time, your peace, or your dignity. You are allowed to decide what is acceptable in your space. Firmness means you do not over-explain. Over-explaining often signals doubt. When you stack multiple reasons behind a boundary, you open doors for counterarguments. Someone can challenge your reasoning. They can debate your logic. But they cannot debate your decision. That doesn't work for me is complete. It may not satisfy everyone, but it establishes ownership. You are not seeking approval. You are communicating a limit. Calm boundaries also require consistency. If you enforce a limit one day and ignore it the next, you teach others that your standards fluctuate with your mood. Consistency builds credibility. When people know that your response will be steady every time, they adjust their behavior accordingly. Not because you intimidated them, but because you demonstrated reliability. There is also strength in timing. Boundaries are most effective when delivered early, not after months of silent resentment. Waiting until you are overwhelmed often results in emotional outbursts. Setting boundaries early allows you to remain composed. It prevents escalation. It signals self-respect before frustration accumulates. The longer you tolerate something, the harder it becomes to address calmly. Firm does not mean cold. You can be respectful and direct at the same time. Tone matters. Posture matters. When your body language aligns with your words, your message becomes stronger. Stand upright. Keep your voice even. Maintain composure. Physical steadiness reinforces verbal clarity. You communicate that you are grounded in your decision. Another key element of calm boundaries is consequence. A boundary without follow-through is simply a preference. If you say you will leave a conversation if it becomes disrespectful, you must actually leave when it does. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just quietly and consistently. Consequence does not require confrontation, it requires action, and action reinforces seriousness. Some people will test you when you first begin setting boundaries. They may accuse you of changing. They may attempt to provoke an emotional reaction. This is where calm matters most. If you react defensively, the focus shifts away from the boundary. If you remain steady, their resistance loses momentum. Over time, people either adjust or distance themselves. Both outcomes protect your peace. It is important to understand that not everyone will like your boundaries. But respect does not require agreement. Mature individuals may not love your limits, but they will recognize them. Those who consistently challenge reasonable boundaries reveal more about themselves than about you. Your responsibility is not to manage their feelings, it is to maintain your standards. Clear, calm boundaries transform your relationships because they redefine access. Access to your time, access to your energy, access to your attention. When you become intentional about who receives those resources, your life becomes more stable. You are no longer reacting to everyone's demands. You are choosing where to invest. Firmness also builds internal confidence. Each time you uphold a boundary without anger, you reinforce your own self-respect. You prove to yourself that you can protect your well-being without aggression. That quiet confidence changes how you carry yourself. It changes how others approach you. People sense when someone is not easily pushed. Setting clear, calm boundaries is not about creating walls. It is about creating structure. Structure supports healthy interaction. Without it, relationships drift into resentment and imbalance. With it, expectations become clear. Mutual respect becomes possible. And even when someone chooses not to honor your limits, you remain steady because your boundaries are not emotional reactions. They are deliberate decisions delivered with composure and enforced with consistency. Respond, don't react. Control the tempo of the conversation. That principle separates emotional impulsiveness from mature authority. Most people lose influence the moment they lose pace. They allow someone else's tone, urgency, or aggression to dictate their response. And once that happens, they are no longer leading the interaction. They are chasing it. Reaction is immediate. It is driven by impulse. It is sharp, fast, and often defensive. When someone criticizes you and you instantly fire back, that is reaction. When someone provokes you and you raise your voice to match theirs, that is reaction. It feels powerful because it is quick. But speed is not strength. Speed is surrender when it is uncontrolled. The person who sets the emotional speed of the conversation often sets its outcome. Responding is different. Responding requires awareness. It requires restraint. It requires you to notice the trigger without becoming it. When someone says something disrespectful and you pause instead of retaliating, you shift the rhythm. You create space. That space gives you options. Options give you power. Controlling the tempo does not mean speaking slowly for effect. It means refusing to be rushed into emotional decisions. Some people intentionally create urgency to destabilize you. They interrupt, they escalate. They throw multiple accusations at once. They pressure you to answer immediately. If you rush to keep up, you lose clarity. When you slow down deliberately, you disrupt their strategy. Silence is one of the strongest tempo tools available. A brief pause after a provocative comment can feel uncomfortable, especially if the other person expects instant engagement. But that discomfort works in your favor. It signals that you are processing, not panicking. It forces the other person to sit with their own words. Silence often reveals more than rapid rebuttals ever could. Tone is another element of tempo. If someone speaks loudly and you match their volume, the conversation accelerates. If someone becomes sarcastic and you mirror it, the tension intensifies. But when you lower your voice instead of raising it, when you stay measured instead of sarcastic, you change the emotional climate. People naturally adjust to steady energy. Calmness slows escalation. Responding also means choosing precision over excess. Reactions are often loaded with exaggerations. You always do this. You never listen. These phrases inflame rather than clarify. Responses are specific. That comment was unnecessary. I don't appreciate being interrupted. Specificity keeps the focus on behavior, not character. It reduces defensiveness and maintains direction. Another part of controlling tempo is refusing to engage with every point thrown at you. In heated moments, people often introduce multiple accusations to overwhelm you. If you attempt to address everything at once, a controlled response isolates one issue at a time. Let's focus on this first. That statement alone reclaims structure. It slows chaos into order. Emotional discipline is essential here. If you feel yourself becoming tense, acknowledge it internally. Take a breath. Relax your shoulders. Small physical adjustments influence mental clarity. When your body calms, your speech follows. When your speech steadies, the conversation stabilizes. It is important to understand that responding does not mean tolerating disrespect. It means addressing it strategically. There is a difference between passivity and composure. Passivity avoids confrontation out of fear. Composure confronts without losing control. You can be direct and calm at the same time. You can say, "That's not acceptable," without raising your voice. Firmness delivered steadily often carries more impact than anger delivered loudly. Controlling tempo also involves timing your engagement. Not every issue needs immediate resolution. If emotions are high, you can say, "Let's revisit this later." That statement protects the integrity of the conversation. It prevents damage caused by heated exchanges. Choosing the right time is part of controlling pace. When you respond instead of react, you protect your credibility. Emotional reactions can undermine your message, even if your point is valid. People remember tone more than content. By staying measured, you ensure that your words are evaluated on merit rather than dismissed due to delivery. There is also a psychological shift that occurs when you consistently respond calmly. Others begin to recognize that they cannot easily provoke you. Attempts to bait you lose effectiveness. Your predictability becomes a boundary in itself. People understand that dramatic behavior will not extract dramatic responses from you. Responding requires patience. It requires confidence in your ability to hold space without filling it immediately. It requires trust that clarity is more persuasive than speed. The more you practice this discipline, the more natural it becomes. You start to notice triggers sooner. You intercept reactions earlier. You speak with intention rather than impulse. In every conversation, there is an invisible rhythm. Fast exchanges create tension. Measured exchanges create understanding. When you consciously slow your breathing, shorten your sentences, and eliminate unnecessary emotion, you set a stable rhythm. Stability invites respect. Instability invites chaos. Responding instead of reacting transforms conflict into controlled dialogue. It keeps you aligned with your standards. It prevents regret. It ensures that even under pressure, your character remains intact. And when you consistently control the tempo, you are no longer at the mercy of someone else's emotional pace. You become the steady presence in the room, guiding the conversation rather than being dragged by it. Limit access, not just interaction. Protect your energy strategically. Many adults believe that dealing with difficult or toxic people simply means learning how to handle conversations better. They focus on improving responses, choosing better words, staying calm during conflict. That matters. But there is a deeper level of protection that most people ignore. It is not just about how you interact, it is about how much access you allow. Access is proximity. Access is frequency. Access is emotional availability. When someone has unlimited access to you, they have unlimited opportunity to disrupt your peace. You can master communication skills, but if the same person has constant entry into your time, your phone, your personal space, your thoughts, eventually even strong communication becomes exhausting. Strategy begins with recognizing that energy is finite. Not everyone deserves equal portions of it. Limiting access does not require drama. It requires awareness. If someone consistently leaves you drained, that is data. If every conversation turns into criticism, tension, or subtle disrespect, that is information. Adults who grow do not ignore patterns of depletion. They adjust exposure. You do not have to announce it. You simply shift how often, how long, and how deeply you engage. Sometimes this means shortening conversations. Instead of an hour-long phone call, it becomes 15 minutes. Instead of daily texting, it becomes occasional check-ins. Instead of sharing personal goals, you keep discussions surface level. You are not being cold. You are being selective. Selectivity is not cruelty. It is wisdom. Energy management is rarely talked about, but it is critical. Every interaction costs something. That's emotion. Focus. When you repeatedly invest those resources in someone who creates instability, you pay twice. First during the interaction, then afterward when you replay it in your mind. Limiting access reduces both costs. It creates breathing room for clarity. Strategic distance is especially important when full removal is not possible. Maybe it is a coworker. Maybe it is a relative. Maybe it is someone embedded in your social circle. In those situations, you may not be able to eliminate interaction entirely, but you can control depth. Keep conversations professional. Keep topics neutral. Decline unnecessary invitations. You are adjusting exposure, not creating conflict. There is power in understanding that access is earned, not automatic. Just because someone has known you for years does not mean they are entitled to constant entry into your life. Just because someone is family does not mean they have unlimited emotional privileges. Adulthood involves redefining access based on current behavior, not historical connection. Limiting access also means being mindful of what you share. Vulnerability is valuable, but it must be placed wisely. If someone has shown that they minimize your struggles or weaponize your disclosures, that is a signal to reduce emotional transparency with them. You can still be polite. You can still be respectful. But you protect deeper layers of yourself for safer spaces. Another dimension of access is digital. Constant availability through messaging and social media creates the illusion that everyone deserves immediate response. They do not. Delayed replies are not disrespectful. They are boundaries around attention. You are allowed to decide when you engage. You are allowed to silence notifications. You are allowed to prioritize your mental clarity over someone else's urgency. Protecting energy strategically also requires letting go of guilt. Many people feel obligated to remain fully accessible out of fear of being misunderstood. But overexposure often leads to resentment. Resentment builds when you give more than you can sustain. Strategic limitation prevents that buildup. It preserves respect on both sides because you are interacting from stability rather than exhaustion. It is important to recognize that limiting access is not about punishment, it is about alignment. When someone consistently disrespects your time or boundaries, reducing access aligns your life with your standards. You are not trying to teach them a lesson, you are protecting your capacity. And capacity determines performance in every area of life. There is also a psychological benefit to strategic distance. When you reduce exposure to negativity, your perspective clears. You think more independently. You regain emotional neutrality. Continuous exposure to toxic energy can distort perception. Distance restores objectivity. It allows you to see situations without emotional fog. Some people will notice the shift. They may question it. They may attempt to reassert access. This is where consistency matters. You do not need to defend your adjustment, you simply maintain it. Over time, people adapt to the level of access you consistently offer. If they do not, that reveals their dependence on control rather than connection. Limiting access requires discipline because it often feels easier to comply than to adjust. It may feel simpler to answer every call, attend every gathering, engage in every debate. But simplicity in the moment can create complexity later. Strategic limitation might feel uncomfortable at first, but it creates long-term peace. Energy is a resource that fuels your goals, relationships, and growth. When you guard it intentionally, you operate from strength. When you allow it to be drained repeatedly, you function from depletion. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is foundational. The more intentional you become about access, the more stable your emotional state becomes. And stability changes how you show up everywhere else. Limiting access, not just interaction, shifts you from reactive survival to strategic living. You stop managing constant disruption. You start designing your environment. You become less available for chaos and more available for purpose. And that quiet adjustment strengthens your position in ways that arguments never could. Detach from the need to be understood. Choose peace over validation. This is one of the hardest lessons adulthood teaches, because most conflict is fueled by a desperate desire to explain ourselves. We want people to see our intention. We want them to acknowledge our effort. We want them to admit we were right. And when they don't, something inside us feels unsettled, almost threatened. So we talk more, we clarify again, we defend. We repeat. We try different words, different tones, different examples. But the more we chase validation, the more we surrender peace. The need to be understood is natural. It is human to want connection and fairness. But not everyone is committed to understanding you. Some people are committed to winning. Some are committed to preserving their ego. Some are committed to misunderstanding you because misunderstanding protects their narrative. When you keep trying to explain yourself to someone who benefits from not understanding you, you exhaust yourself. There is a quiet strength in recognizing when explanation has reached its limit. You can present your perspective clearly once, maybe twice. But after that, repetition becomes self-betrayal. If someone genuinely wants clarity, they will ask questions, they will lean in, they will show effort. If they respond with dismissal, interruption, or distortion, that tells you something important. It tells you the issue is not clarity, it is willingness. Detaching from the need to be understood does not mean you stop communicating. It means you stop over-communicating to earn approval. You state your position calmly. You allow it to stand. You resist the urge to over-justify. Over-justification often signals doubt. When you trust your own reasoning, You do not feel compelled to defend it endlessly. Validation is powerful because it feels like confirmation of your worth. When someone says, "I see your point," or "You're right," it soothes something inside you. But when that validation does not come, it does not automatically mean you are wrong. It may simply mean the other person is not capable of offering it. Their limitation does not invalidate your reality. Many toxic dynamics are sustained by the hope that if you just explain yourself better, the other person will change. You believe that once they finally understand how their behavior affects you, they will adjust. Sometimes that is true. Some people understand perfectly well, they just prioritize their comfort over your feelings. And once you see that, detachment becomes necessary. Detachment is emotional independence. It is the ability to say, "I have expressed myself clearly." Whether you accept it is your choice. That shift releases pressure. You no longer feel responsible for managing someone else's perception of you. You focus instead on managing your own integrity. Peace over validation means choosing internal stability instead of external approval. It means recognizing that your self-respect cannot depend on someone else's agreement. When you depend on validation, your emotional state fluctuates with every reaction. A nod of approval lifts you. A look of disagreement unsettles you. Detachment stabilizes you. Your sense of self becomes less reactive. This mindset also changes how you handle disagreement. You stop viewing it as a threat. Someone can disagree with you without dismantling your confidence. You can listen without absorbing. You can respond without defending your entire identity. Conversations become exchanges of perspective rather than battles for affirmation. There is also freedom in accepting that not everyone will see you accurately. Some will misinterpret your boundaries as coldness. Some will label your calm as arrogance. Some will frame your distance as hostility. You cannot correct every misunderstanding without sacrificing your peace. At some point, you must decide that your clarity is enough, even if their perception remains distorted. Detachment protects your energy because it shortens unnecessary conversations. When you no longer feel compelled to convince, you speak concisely. You state your truth once and move on. You do not engage in circular arguments. You do not chase closure from someone unwilling to offer it. You stop negotiating your dignity for acknowledgement. It is important to understand that detachment is built on self-trust. If you constantly doubt your own perspective, you will seek validation to fill that gap. But when you reflect carefully, evaluate honestly, and stand by your conclusions, external confirmation becomes less critical. You know where you stand. That certainty creates calm. Choosing peace over validation does not mean isolating yourself from healthy feedback. Constructive dialogue remains valuable. But there is a difference between constructive disagreement and chronic invalidation. One expands you, the other drains you. Detachment helps you distinguish between the two. Over time, this approach reshapes your emotional posture. You become less reactive to criticism and less dependent on praise. You engage because you choose to, not because you need to be affirmed. Your conversations become clearer because they are not loaded with hidden desperation for approval. When you detach from the need to be understood, you reclaim authority over your emotional state. You stop chasing alignment with people who resist it. You accept that your responsibility is to communicate honestly and respectfully, not to control how it is received. And in that acceptance, a quiet peace settles in. Not because everyone agrees with you, but because you no longer require them to. Choose growth over revenge. Elevate instead of engaging. That decision separates temporary satisfaction from lasting strength. Revenge is emotional. It feels sharp, immediate, almost intoxicating. When someone disrespects you, betrays you, or tries to diminish you, the instinct to strike back can feel justified. Your mind starts crafting responses. You imagine exposing them, embarrassing them, proving them wrong. In the moment, retaliation feels like power. But power that depends on someone else's fall is fragile. Revenge keeps you emotionally tied to the person who hurt you. Every thought of getting even keeps the connection alive. You replay the situation, you rehearse arguments, you wait for opportunities to respond. While you are planning retaliation, your energy remains anchored to the past. Growth, on the other hand, redirects that energy forward. It asks a different question. Not, how do I hurt them back? But, how do I rise beyond this? There is a hidden cost to revenge that most people ignore. Even if you succeed in wounding someone who wounded you, the relief is short-lived. The situation does not disappear. The memory does not dissolve. And often, retaliation escalates conflict rather than ending it. You may win a moment, but you prolong the war. Growth ends the cycle. It removes you from the battlefield entirely. Choosing elevation does not mean pretending the hurt did not happen. It means processing it without weaponizing it. You acknowledge the pain. You learn from the experience. You adjust your boundaries. But you refuse to let bitterness dictate your actions. Bitterness narrows focus. Growth expands it. When you pursue revenge, your decisions are reactive. You move based on what someone else did. Your direction is determined by their behavior. When you pursue growth, your direction is self-determined. You move because of who you are becoming, not because of who they were. That shift restores control. There is also a level of dignity that comes with restraint. Anyone can retaliate. It takes discipline to step back. It takes confidence to say, I will not lower myself to that. That discipline builds internal strength. You prove to yourself that your character is not negotiable. You become less impulsive, less emotionally volatile. Your composure becomes part of your identity. Elevating instead of engaging also protects your reputation. People observe how you respond under pressure. If you react with revenge, you may feel justified, but others may see volatility. When you respond with growth, your stability becomes visible. You build respect without demanding it. Growth transforms pain into instruction. Instead of asking how to retaliate, you ask what the situation revealed. Did it expose a weak boundary? Did it highlight misplaced trust? Did it show you an area where you need stronger discernment? Lessons extracted from conflict become tools for future resilience. Revenge extracts nothing but temporary relief. Another important reality is that revenge often delays healing. As long as you are focused on getting even, you are not focused on recovering. Your mind remains engaged in conflict. Growth shifts attention inward. It prioritizes self-improvement, self-reflection, and forward momentum. Healing accelerates when retaliation is removed from the equation. There is also strategic wisdom in elevation. When someone attempts to provoke you and you refuse to engage, provocation requires participation. Without your response, their attempt falls flat. Silence can be more powerful than confrontation. Success can be more effective than argument. Choosing growth does not mean you allow injustice to continue unchecked. It means you address it constructively. You enforce boundaries. You remove yourself if necessary. You pursue accountability through appropriate channels rather than emotional retaliation. There is strength in structured response rather than impulsive reaction. Revenge narrows your world to one person and one event. Growth broadens it to your entire future. You begin to invest energy into building skills, strengthening discipline, refining character. You focus on becoming someone who cannot be easily shaken. That transformation outlasts any moment of revenge. There is also emotional freedom in letting go of the desire to hurt back. Carrying revenge creates tension. It fuels anger. It keeps wounds open. When you release that desire, you lighten your internal load. You no longer rehearse scenarios in your mind. You no longer wait for opportunities to retaliate. You redirect attention to building something better. Elevation is not passive. It is active redirection. You choose improvement over obsession. You choose discipline over impulse. You choose long-term strength over short-term satisfaction. That choice compounds over time. Each situation handled with restraint strengthens your emotional endurance. The most powerful response to someone who tried to diminish you is not proving them wrong publicly. It is proving yourself right privately through consistent growth. When you elevate instead of engaging, you step out of reactive cycles and into intentional progress. You demonstrate that your life is too valuable to be steered by resentment. And that decision shifts your trajectory from reaction to expansion.